Welcome to Connections, a podcast from the Graymere Church of Christ in Columbia, Tennessee. Our goal is to have discussions and messages that encourage us and strengthen our faith. We appreciate you joining us. Let's keep learning and growing together. Welcome to Connections. Thank you for joining us for a conversation that will hopefully be spiritually encouraging and uplifting for you. I'm really thankful that we have Chuck Morris with us, and we're going to be talking about some things that hopefully will help us understand how we can encourage young people, especially our teenagers, and also to understand the changes and the shifts in culture that they've experienced. But just as a reminder, you can find this podcast either on our YouTube channel or on Spotify or other places, and it might be a good way to share it with people, maybe to start a spiritual conversation that way. And so we appreciate everybody who's been giving us positive feedback, and we just want to continue to get the word out there and hopefully spark some conversations. So we'll start by letting Chuck, if you just want to kind of introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. Appreciate the opportunity to be with you.
Yeah.
My name is Chuck Morris. I've been in ministry for over 30 years. I started out my work and did 21 years of full-time youth ministry, and that was sort of the heartbeat of what I was working in, and with two different congregations, and then began preaching at a local congregation in Dyersburg, Tennessee. I have moved over this way about 3.5 years ago, and just loved being here. And one of the things that I found as a preacher now that still never leaves you is just that passion for the kids, the young people. And I think, as we talk today, that word used, connection. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's all, how are we effectively connecting our teenagers to the Word of God? How are we connecting the members of the family and the church to one another, and to that relational, that spiritual? I still believe that study that talked about, there needs to be at least 5 or 6 spiritually significant relationships that teenagers or any Christian for that matter, has. I think it's very true. What do people need when they come in the doors? They need a place to belong. They need the message of the gospel, obviously, but a place to belong and a place to work.
Yeah.
And I think that's the same absolutely for teens, even if not more so, for young people. So, during my 16 years in the Jackson area, I actually worked with Jackson Christian School, and I was the director of spiritual life there, was involved in a lot of different things. I joke about being the utility player on the team. It's like the schedule got made, and it's like, hey, we don't have anybody to teach health. Coach Morris, you're on. It's like, hey, we need somebody to fill in with middle school band this year. You're up, and so... Right. It was a great, I loved it. But in that I also coached football. And so I think through the years, I've been able to see a lot of different things through the lives and through the eyes of kids. And there are a lot of things, or there are things that have changed, but it's kind of like Solomon said, there's nothing new under the sun.
Yeah.
And, as I reflect back on my first years in ministry, I can remember seeing kids with, the issues with cutting, or with parents that are, going through divorces, and the insecurities that are wrapped around that, and whether it's guys, and the arrogance that kind of really, I'm all that, but it's really just a message of insecurity.
Yeah.
Or girls that are so hungry to be in a relationship that, they're willing to sacrifice things that they shouldn't. And, as I look back, I see so many of those things that are the same, that haven't changed. But what seems to me, with the elevation of the social media and the access to so many things, whether it's through videos or the latest TikTok craze that we want to imitate to feel accepted, so much of it does boil back down to, do I have a place of connection? am I accepted? Do I belong? And I think some of the antics and the extremes to which which teenagers are going today to feel that, they've kind of expanded into some more crazy spaces, or that the things that from an addiction type, things that they're willing to. I think teenagers have always been somewhat, enamored or invited into the realm of what's, kind of the, whether it's the alcohol, or am I going to do this or that? It's like those things are still there. It's just like they're the magnified nature of what, I don't know, what they can do is the available, but then also the consequential nature of those bigger things too, that if anything, the things have not so much changed at their base level. They've just become, a lot more dangerous and a lot greater, you get caught and there's a single photograph, or there's a single negative back years ago, versus now there's a photograph that's never digitally going away.
Yeah.
And, so the things about consequences, I think with kids to me, those are the spectrum of what is available to them has just so expanded. And then I think just in some ways that compounds the pressure that they feel to be something that they may not be. If and so I just think our kids today do deal with a lot of added pressure from the things that they're constantly taking in.
Yeah. And as you mentioned that too, I just thought how important it is for those of us who were not in that stage of life, and for adults to look and understand, you mentioned the TikTok video where we've got to record this or learn these moves so we can, for someone who's not in that world, they're thinking, well, why is this happening? But if they can understand, the reason for that is that seeking belonging that every generation has.
Right.
It's just now this is manifesting in a different way.
Yeah.
And so maybe that can help us understand, okay, here's the reason behind it. I heard someone years ago, and I wish I could give credit to whatever book this came from, but someone was quoting a book where they said a counselor had told them one question that teenagers always have in their mind every time they enter a room is, how am I doing?
Right.
Like, okay, how am I doing? Am I okay? And we all have that to a certain extent, but you really see it in those teenage years. And when I heard that, I was an adult then, but I still thought that makes a lot of sense. I remember that question. And so now there are ways.
I'm feeling that right now.
Well,
how am I doing?
Yeah, that's right.
They can.
Well, good.
And
you're doing good.
Some of those things we grow out of, but some of those things are part of just who we are as people.
Yeah.
And that those levels of the things that we fear, the things that we worry about, the hurts that we carry, kids are kids. And it's interesting. I had a conversation with a dad just this week, reflecting back on, well, we didn't do that. We didn't go, that wasn't what, and what's she thinking? I'm raising my daughter, and what's this? And I'm thinking to myself, the reality is, I remember when you were a teenager and I remember the things that you did.
Oh yeah.
And, these are similar things. It's about, whether it was you or whether it's her, it's about a kid that's really trying to find their place.
Mm-hmm.
And they're looking for that. Do I belong? Am I accepted? Do I matter to these people? And, and as we look at that in the bigger sense, I heard Dr. Chip Dodd talk about this idea of that as he's written The Voice of the Heart, phenomenal work, and counselor here in the States. But one of the things he says, even as babies, we come into the world looking for who's looking for us. And you think about that. I mean, the things that a baby is crying out for at its very earliest breath is, "Hey, where is she? Where's the person that I'm here for?"
Yeah.
And I've thought a lot about that, and I think that continues on in those adolescence years, even, maybe even more exaggerated because of the transition hormonally, developmentally, and you go through all of this awkward that teenage years can be. And so for us as Christian leaders and as brothers and sisters in Christ, and how important is it for us to step into those spaces and say, "Hey, you matter. Tell me about how you're doing. Talk, what's going on. I love you guys. I love you, and I appreciate you."
Yeah.
And just for them to feel valued by the people that really matter.
Yeah.
Their family of faith. I mean, to get a like on a video is like, I'm feeling valued because somebody said that was a good thing.
Right.
But when it's real people and it's real words and it's real conversation, I think at some point in time, those teenagers get to a place where they go, that's really what I ought to be looking for, not this.
Mm-hmm.
I've been pouring so much time into this and trying to find acceptance in people that I will never see or may never interact with, but these are people that I know.
Yeah.
And I think if we can get more of those relationships, if we can develop those relationships, I think we'll add so much strength and faith to those kids, but also just value to their hearts and who they are.
Well, and just even as you say that, I was thinking how one of the things that can intimidate people who aren't teens, but maybe are like, if I'm going to teach this Bible class, or if I want to talk to teens, you might feel the pressure of somehow I've got to relate to them or be like them. And there's certainly an element of that. You want to relate to them. But just as you describe that concern, people who are looking for us, I'm thinking about all kinds of volunteers in youth group over the years that kids loved.
Mm-hmm.
And these people made no effort to try to like dress like teenagers
Be cool,
or be into whatever they just loved the teenagers.
Yeah.
And they picked up on that. So these are the people they would go to ask for advice.
Yeah.
And that was what it took. And it's so easy for us to forget that, I think.
Looking back on my youth ministry years, that's something that I probably would look back on as and be as proud of as anything, because we were willing to bring in and include different people, whether it was an old retired Navy guy that was a post office guy converted in his 60s. That just, man, he was willing to go and drive the bus and serve and help, and the kids loved him.
Yeah.
I mean, he had a bass boat and he'd take 2 or 3 guys out fishing, and and when he passed, I mean, he literally wheeled his boat to one of the kids in the youth group, and he, wheeled his hot tub to one of the kids in the youth group. And, it's just like, these were his people. And those kids many of those kids that he mentored during that season are still faithful.
Mm-hmm.
They're fathers now. They still talk about their memories with Harvey and the things that,
Yeah.
And he wasn't a perfect guy, but he was willing to step into their lives.
Yeah.
And he was willing to speak. I mean, he would be honest with them. I mean, he would just cut to the chase. Old Navy guy. I mean, he said some things that he really probably shouldn't have said to them. But the reality was, those kids never doubted, does this man care for us? And I think about one old grandmother that got involved with us, and Granny Jet. It was Jetta, and man, it was one of those kids would come back and like, Mr. Chuck, don't ever ride with Miss Jetta. She's like, it's. I was like, that's definitely probably a good idea. Y'all need to go to Sonic, and let somebody else. But again, what was she doing though? She was pouring into their lives in the best way that she knew how. And it didn't matter that she wasn't the coolest person in the room. It mattered that she cared, and she said, "Hey, how are you doing?
Yeah.
Hey, what's going on? Oh, I remember what that was like." I've been through some of that in my life. And, the connection, again, that word connections is, to me, there are so many, when you think about, we are so much more connected from the social media, from our internet access, from the things that we get plugged into all over the place. And I think, and it really, there was a quote in this book that I've been reading called The Mentor. It's fantastic, but he talks about, I think it's Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, and he talks about the tyranny of the rectangle. And it's basically that this is our master. Yeah. And you see it, and we're plugged in, and to me, that's the biggest thing that I think has changed, is just how sucked into those little squares we've all become.
Yeah.
And I think bringing them into conversation, asking, and maybe even creating some spaces. There was a gentleman in Dyersburg, and he passed away about 4 or 5 years ago, was a tremendous servant of the Lord, cooked. He would put on church meals, and he had these handwritten posters he had made that were like, absolutely no cell phones at the table.
Oh, yeah.
And it was like, because he wanted, and he had a terrible experience growing up. He didn't have connections in his life, and the ones he did were bad. And now he's, creating spaces where I want this to be a good dinner for you. Mm-hmm. I want you to have conversation with people that love and care about you. And so I think pouring into their lives, asking them about, how things are, what's going on in your life. Hey, tell me, and just knowing their names. How many kids, just by, calling their name out, that matters, seeing them and speaking to them, whether they're a teenager, but I think it starts a lot younger than that. I mean, when you see kids walking in the door and high-fiving, and loving on those kids, and to me, that's one of the things that I feel like has been the greatest blessing, personally for me, is that I try to invest in kids from every age, all the way into our adults in the pews, but I want the little kids to know, hey, Mr. Chuck cares about us, and for them to feel that connection even earlier in life than that. But going back to people in spaces and work, I think about, it's important for ministry teams to look into your youth ministry spaces and to see, man, there are some kids that you look at, and just like with a coach and a football team, there's some kids, oh man, we got to get that kid on the team. He's awesome. He's a game changer. He's a world beater, and you want those kind of players in a team, and you want those sort of personalities in your youth program. But I think the real test and strength of a youth program is seeing how many kids in your youth group belong there that wouldn't belong anywhere else. That you have created a culture that everybody is going to find a place in this group. Yeah. And, I think that's, we used to say on our coaching staff, we didn't cut kids. I mean, if you wanted to play and be a part of the team, we're going to find a place, because we realize some players, we need the players. Some players on the team, the players just need the team. Yeah. And I can still remember a kid that came out, and he had some different special needs, and he made the statement. He said, "Coach, I'm looking for a different kind of victory." And it wasn't about playing football. It was about him finding a place, and being a part of a group, and finding that belonging. So I look back and I think about a lot of those stories, and truthfully, you go back in the dialogues that happen among old players, you know what they're going to celebrate? They're going to celebrate the Harveys and the Jettas and the kids like this that weren't the superstars, the all-state players, but they were the kids that they were made to feel like they were made to find belonging in our space. They were given greater value because of success that they found in that space. And I think if we can do that more and more in the church, that you don't have to be the guy that gets up front. You may be the unique kid that just is high-fiving everybody.
Right.
And is loved by everybody. It's like,
Yeah.
man, yeah.
Well, and that's such a good training for just the church in general, because we always struggle with what happens when someone graduates from the youth group if they don't have those connections. But if they've got connections with other adults, then it's really a natural kind of thing. I was thinking about this. I got the chance to be a driver / chaperone for a youth trip for the first time in a while, and it was really neat to see on this trip. You have so many different kinds of personalities, and just seeing as we had a junior senior trip, everybody at some point in the trip was hanging out with everybody else. Everybody was talking, and I just was thinking that's such good training for the church, because that's what the church is. There are people that you'll get to know in a congregation that you probably wouldn't have ever gotten to know any other way, that you'd hang out with, or that you'd learn from. That's the way God designed the church. And so part of what you're describing, I think if we as adults could catch that vision of, hey, this isn't just about these teenage years, it's about teaching them how the church works
for the rest of life.
Yeah, this is what we're going to do. I was curious to see, I know we talked a little bit about, some of what the guys are dealing with, some of what the girls deal with. And you have done a lot, not only in coaching, but also with us here at Graymere and in other contexts, future minister camps, so training a lot of young guys. And so you've been in that teaching and mentor role. Mm-hmm. What have you seen in your experience that are some of the challenges that teenage guys have always faced? And then maybe what are some of the maybe new variations on some of those challenges?
Yeah, certainly. I think that insecurity, I mean, we all at some point in time are in that space of, do I belong? Am I good enough? And to see that can be, exaggerated on the far end of by this is the cockiest kid I've ever met. But really he's not. He's really insecure, masking that with his cockiness.
Yeah.
And being able to see, beyond the shell, to, get to the heart of kids is kind of at the deeper level of, okay, what's really going on? I mean, what's he really feeling and what's underneath that surface? And so with guys, historically, I think that's kind of at the base. We need men who are willing to train men, because women can't teach men how to be men.
Right.
I mean, I love the women that have been involved in my life, but a man needs a man to demonstrate how to be a man. And that's where, as Christian men in the church, it's so important to be involved in camps or in trips or in, experiences that where men are training young men, to see how we're to live. I think with our, obviously things that have changed, just the whole issue with technology and the issues related to pornography in our culture, that's such an, so easily accessed. And I would even say with the drugs and alcohol and things that, that kids are, things that used to be illegal are now, closer to being legalized even here in our state, and things you're like, what in the world? And I keep praying that there's going to be someone somewhere that goes, why do we allow that stuff out so easily to be accessed and so harmful to our kids and to all of us for that matter?
Yeah.
That we look at and that it's like, why are you doing that? And this is so detrimental to you spiritually. But again, kids don't realize that unless somebody's in their life, not just saying don't do it, but saying, hey, look, I know. I've been there, and this is how it destroyed part of my life, and I'm willing to share that.
Yeah.
And again, that's kind of telling the stories of life instead of being so afraid that somebody's going to find out who we are or what we've done, that we actually are willing to open up to kids and say, this is my story.
Yeah.
And for them to go, I never knew that. and to see the kids slowly kind of walk out of the room, and then all of a sudden 2 of them look back around and be like, "Hey, could I talk to you?"
Right. Yeah.
It's not the guy up front that's polished and got it all together that the kids are going to talk to.
Mm-hmm.
I think back to one of my friends that was a physician in Jackson, and he spent some time going through addiction and rehabilitation, and would publicly, he had confessed that at the church, was an elder in the church, and as we've talked about his service in the kingdom post all of that time. He said, "Do you know when something happens, they're like, people are like, hey, you need to go talk to so and so.
Yeah.
You need to reach out to him." And I'm like, why? Why him? Because he's real. Because he will walk with you through it. And I think kids need to know, are these people real? And will they walk through this with me even when I've blown it monumentally?
Yeah. And they can sense if you are real, if you're being real, if you're being authentic, that teenagers are pretty good about figuring that out.
Absolutely.
Quickly.
You mentioned it related to the girls side of thing. Have 3 daughters, and the biggest thing for me as a dad was I wanted them, to hear from us and to draw their value from us, and to hear that and from their faith, from their God, from their relationship with Christ, but to know you're going to hear other voices.
Yeah.
I shared with a group of teenagers this past week. I got the chance to go to a high school in Spring Hill and speak, and the theme was on the power of the voice. And he'd given me the topic or the text around, Elijah and the voice and still small voice. And I'm thinking, how do I kind of wrap that into the life with right. these teenagers? So I kind of backed it out from the text that he had given me to the bigger picture. And I said, whose voice are you listening to?
Mm-hmm.
Because you go back and you got King Ahab, and he's like, "Oh, here's the troubler of Israel." Was that true? No, it wasn't true.
Yeah.
That wasn't true. But that would have affected him if he had listened to it. And then you go into the next scene, and here's the prophets on the mountain, and they're crying out to their false god and all this kind of stuff. And you listen to that, and it's kind of like, okay, here's the other extremes. Are you going to listen to the crowd?
Yeah.
And our teenagers are struggling with the same thing. Are you going to listen to the most negative things said about you? Are you going to listen to the popularity chorus? And then back to the, even beyond the battle there, where the prophets were all killed, and then Jezebel.
Mm-hmm.
You got this person that's like, I'm fixing to kill you.
Yeah.
And you got this wickedness. Because there's lots of wickedness in our world that's speaking out to our kids. What voice are you listening to? And then kind of even bringing it back around to that voice that sometimes we battle with inside of ourselves. Elijah he was struggling. He was depressed. He was scared. And he had all these feelings inside that he was just kind of eating and just kind of packing down. And that, if, helping kids unpack their feelings is a huge thing,
Absolutely.
But here he is, and am I going to listen to those? Where I says, I just wish I was dead. I wish I'd never been born. God, I'm the only one.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of that you've got the difference between what you perceive as reality and what is reality.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing for us to walk kids through. I mean, okay, I understand what you're feeling. That's kind of what we're perceiving. But is that actually true? Does everybody really not like you?
Right.
Or is it just that one loudmouth that's a jerk? And kind of helping them kind of pull away perception from reality. And so I think about that, and there's that voice, and then there's the voice of God that goes, no, Elijah, you're not the only one.
Yeah. And
there's the voice of truth. And I think as I talked with him about listening, what are you listening to? What's the voice? And probably the greatest contemporary illustration is that young man in California that went to ChatGPT for his counseling.
Yeah.
And eventually it encouraged him to take his life. And I'm thinking, who else should have been in his life?
Mm.
Who else could he have talked to? A school counselor? Could he have talked to his parents? Could he have talked to, a granddad? Could he have talked to somebody at church? Could he have talked to, and all of these possibilities, but he chose to go to this source that was not a source that offered him life and a future.
Yeah, and both of those, I think about the Elijah example and even the one you just mentioned, are really good examples of how the power in what is said comes from often the power that we give it. So if we recognize something as an influence in our life, that's going to change things. So Elijah could face off with all those prophets, and it was fine. He was talking back to him, you know, joking around. But when it came to a voice he started giving credence to, Jezebel, his whole attitude changes.
Right.
You know, and that's such a powerful way to put it, because depending on who our teens are listening to or allowing to help them determine their worth, their value, it makes a big difference.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, that's a powerful, whose voice you're listening to. That's a powerful point.
Coming to a sermon near you.
That's right. Yeah. But while we're talking about that, let me take some notes real quick. No, but it really is. And it's just because that's such a tragic story too with Chat GPT. And it does remind us that of all the dangers that are out there is just the idea of training our young people. Who are you going to listen to, and how, how someone could regard that source as being.
Well, I have an older brother who is a professional counselor in Nashville, and he actually alluded to at a Christian college campus, and he alluded to a student that he's been working with, and he said, Chuck, he told me that we were having this conversation. He said he would estimate that 80% of his friends get their counseling from ChatGPT when they're struggling with emotional stuff, when they're dealing with things. And he said, this was a young man that I was talking to and I was having in a session, but he said across the board, a lot of them they're not going to session. They're not talking to people.
Right.
They're dealing with their emotions and getting their information from, AI.
Yeah.
And so you look at things and you go back to what's changed over the last 30 years. Well, goodness gracious. I mean, if I wanted a kid, 30 years ago, to get advice from somebody, it was a body on a telephone, a face-to-face, but now it's, there are lots of challenges, but at the base of it all there is nothing new under the sun. People are trying to figure out, how do they deal with their humanity? How do they deal with their sin? How do they deal with their hurts and their feelings and their pain? I know I referenced Dr. Chip Dodd, that voice of the heart, and I wish I could put the graphic up, and I might even send it to Chad later and let him stick it in, but he talks about these 8 feelings that we're all born with, and that at their base, every bit of it is part of, who we are, whether it's loneliness, hurt, anger, fear, all these short gladness, that they're all part of us. And it's really, are we learning how to pull out those and express them to be who we've been created to be, so we can do what we've been created to do.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times kids struggle with the feelings and not being able to just bring them out and say, yeah, I'm really lonely. And for an adult to go, that's not a bad thing. Why that's not bad? Because we're created to be in relationship with people.
Yeah.
God's 3 in 1. God's a relational being in and of himself, and we're created in his image. And so, that's not bad that you feel that. That just says you value a relationship with people. And we like that. That's good. And so what Satan says, lonely, you're bad, nobody likes you, nobody's accepting you. The reality is God says, no, you were created to be in relationship, and you value that and you want that.
Yeah.
That's a good thing.
Yeah. And that's a complete reframing of it to help people see that in a totally different light. And again, it comes back to those are those conversations you can have if you have all kinds of different people involved in a youth group or a youth ministry.
Right.
And I think about, I know every youth group probably has a different approach to this. One of the ways that happens here is our Sunday nights mentoring groups, and it's been really neat to see for me just to watch, and I'm not over there on Sunday nights, but I've got two boys that are, and I know who are their mentors and other groups, and just to see those conversations, to see people who are catching up with their people in a mentor group. Hey, how's this going? How's that? That's the context where you can share. Yeah, I know what it's like to feel that way, and it's okay.
Yeah.
I think about Bud Lambert, one of my friends who's all Christian counselor, would always say, it hurts to hurt, but it's not wrong to hurt.
That's right.
And I think that's something powerful, especially for our teens, but for all of us to know that, yeah, it's okay to say, this hurts and I don't like this.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with this emotion. I've just got to experience it and then know how to handle it and process it.
Well, and I kind of going back to that, thinking about just asking those questions, even looking back, and I'm studying right now, talking about John, in the time in his life and ministry, John the Baptizer, when he looks and he's like, are you the one, or should we be waiting for somebody else? And I mean, there are going to be times when you find yourself in a prison, in a dark dungeon, and you've been wrongfully put there, and it's all this kind of stuff. And then all of a sudden you start thinking through things, and it's like, it's okay to ask the question.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to ask the questions that are even hard or difficult or maybe even dark.
Yeah.
And to allow don't, to a parent to say, I want my kids to feel a total freedom to come to me with any question, any feeling, any emotion they may have, and to be able to, for that to feel secure and safe, not to be like, well, what do you mean you're
right?
No, that you just shut them down.
Absolutely.
They're never going to ask you a question about something that's deep on their heart or that's questionable in their, in their morality, spectrum. Again, you've got to be willing to listen and ask questions and ask more questions so that they can kind of walk them through. And I think that's a big thing for whether it's 30 years ago or today. It's actually helping our kids to develop the ability to process through some of that thing, to ask themselves, okay, so is that a good suggestion? Yeah. Whether it came from my best friend that's trying to get me to do something, or whether it came from ChatGTP or whatever. Okay, let me kind of think through that, because if we're not helping them to process from a intellectual side of things, then they're just kind of like, well, anybody wants any input that they take in, it's just gonna be like, okay, I'll go do that.
Right. Well, and I think even of that John example is so good, because what Jesus does when he gets that question is he doesn't say, how dare you ask this question?
Exactly.
He just, okay, well, here's what's happening. Here's what we can tell John. Like,
you go tell John, this, and this.
And that's so powerful. I think of that as a parent. You just think that's a powerful standard to set. That when there's something that comes up that might be difficult for your child to talk to you about, and if it's difficult for your child to talk to you about, it's probably going to be a subject that might be difficult for you to talk about.
Absolutely.
So just recognizing that when it comes up and being willing to say, all right, how can I model Jesus' response here and open up the conversation and work through it?
And to me, that's a whole huge, if we could train every adult, every parent in that space of, I want to be a person that when those questions come, those hard conversations happen, that I listen and I take deep breaths and I don't show the expression of,
right,
what, that, because again, I want to be able to talk to them about it. And I can only talk to them about it if that pathway is still open.
Yeah.
And sometimes my expression becomes a big boulder that just kind of,
absolutely,
done. Okay. Check it out.
Absolutely. And because if it's a difficult topic too, they're going to be watching expression.
Absolutely.
So that does kind of remind us of the importance of how we react, because they'll be picking up on that.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you joining us for thinking through some of these things. One of the things we've noticed on our podcast is there's always a hunger for us to know more about how to help raise children and to know more about how to minister to children. And so I really appreciate the insights. You have had so many different contexts where you've been able to see young people, whether it's youth ministry or teaching or coaching. And so I really appreciate you being willing to share that with us. And thankful for everybody who's joined this conversation. Again, as I reminded everybody of, we can hit what is it? You got to like and subscribe. Okay, I'm trying to learn my YouTube script here, but yeah, be sure to do that, to keep up with it, share the podcast with others. And then, as always, if you're in the Murray County area, if you're up towards Spring Hill, I know the Spring Meadows congregation would love to have you come and to visit them, worship with them. That's where Chuck preaches, and so thankful for him, for his presence here in the area. It's been really great to have you nearby and the good work going on there. If you're in the Columbia area, we'd love for you to come and to worship with us at Graymere, and just to find out ways we could encourage you. Thank you for joining us on Connections. Thank you for being part of Connections. We hope it was an encouragement to you. If you live in the Columbia area and don't have a church home, we would love for you to worship with us. You can find out information about meeting times, classes, and what to expect at graymere.com. You will always receive a warm welcome from the Graymere Church of Christ.